Georgia beat Texas. Perhaps you heard about it. Maybe you saw it. Maybe you watched two idiots overreact to it. Regardless, Georgia beat Texas. So we're just going to coast right into the SEC championship game. Well, maybe come back and let's talk about it today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. The everydayers that are out there, we appreciate you guys so much. You make this thing possible. We are here for you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, FanDuel.com. More on them in a second. Daniel told you at the beginning, he is Daniel, I'm Clint, together Locked On Bulldogs. And yeah, we are the idiots that overreact every single Saturday to a Georgia win or loss, regardless. Okay. Just so happened this last Saturday was glorious in every single facet. We said one of the top 3 games Kirby Smart has ever coached in his entire life. I stand by that, watching the game for a 4th time already this week, Daniel. So nothing has changed my opinion of that. Today we think, okay, hold on. Georgia goes in a bye. We got Florida next week. We're thinking to ourselves, we're a shoo-in for the SEC championship now. We're in the driver's seat. Alabama is deboring their way into a deplorable season. It is just DE is not a good beginning to any words that you're associated with. Decommits coming soon. It's bad. So DeBoer is deboring his way to a Alabama losing season. We just beat Texas and LSU, A&M, Tennessee, Vanderbilt's 25th, but who the heck cares about that? So we're thinking to ourselves, segment 1, who are the teams that are right there near the top to challenge? Who are in the driver's seat of the SEC? Second, who's an up-and-comer? Who's maybe there at the top? Second segment that says we're gonna come close. We're gonna inch our way there, and we might shock some people in the third segment. Final thoughts on the SEC championship. But Daniel, let's start with this. Who are the most likely candidates to make the SEC championship? Not those who are on the second, the first tier of likeliest candidates to make the SEC championship. Who's one team that you have in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start with LSU because I'm going to start with the pros for LSU, and then I'll get to what is the significant con. Obviously, pro number one of 2 teams undefeated in conference play. Those 2 teams play on Saturday in College Station, LSU and A&M. And so obviously a leg up on Georgia already because they have not taken a loss. Their only loss is to non-conference USC in week 1 of the season. And I think that kind of, there's a lot of SEC fan bases that are going to hear the words loss to USC and they're immediately going to dismiss a team, right? Because it's USC. That's Lincoln Riley. That's not even a good USC team. This is a bad USC team.
Very bad.
And LSU lost another week 1 possession game under Brian Kelly. It is a tradition unlike any other in Baton Rouge. But ever since then, obviously we saw the game against Ole Miss. Everybody saw that game where they were able to pull it out at home. I think maybe got a little bit lucky in that game.
Yep.
But what you did see in that game and what you're continuing to see, LSU spent a lot of money this offseason.
Yeah.
Not in the transfer portal, not on NIL. They spent a lot of money on Blake Baker to come over from Missouri to coach this defense. LSU's defense last year was historically bad. One of the worst we have ever seen in college football, certainly for an SEC team. And it came out at the beginning of the year, especially early on in weeks 1 and 2, and the defense didn't look much better than bad. They looked like they didn't know how to tackle. They looked like they weren't in the right position. But LSU's defense is sneaky getting better. Every week, they're getting better. You saw the key stops at the end of the Ole Miss game. Last week against Arkansas, a pesky offense, I'll say, in Arkansas with what they've been able to do, especially at the quarterback position, particularly on the offensive side of the ball.
That LSU beginning of the season, Arkansas was putting points on points on points on points the first couple games, Daniel.
Yeah. And we know that Arkansas team can be a fly in the ointment. Ask Tennessee fans. And LSU shut them down defensively. They're getting great play out of that kid at linebacker. And so their offense is really good. Garrett Nussmeier is really good at quarterback, and Lacey at receiver, another great LSU wide receiver. What else is new? But their defense is really the reason that I think. Now the schedule is the thing against them, because they have to go to A&M this weekend, and then they follow that up after an off day, which is good, with Alabama coming to town. Then a trip to Florida, then home against Vandy, sneaky, and then finish the season against OU. At this point, Oklahoma is, and I don't say this lightly, by far the worst team left on this schedule. Florida is way better than Oklahoma at this point.
Oklahoma is the worst team in the SEC, and if they were in the Big 12, they'd be one of the worst teams.
The worst teams in the Big 12. Yep. Oklahoma is terrible.
Terrible team. Yeah. Okay.
But that's a tough schedule. And so LSU is my first team. Who's your team that is the biggest threat to Georgia getting into that SEC championship game?
By the way, LSU is there because Nussmeier is there. I know the defense is sneaky, but Nussmeier is, I'll go ahead and say it, he's the best quarterback in college football. And I don't particularly care about stats. I don't care about Cam. I don't care about that. He's doing great. Okay, for me, Daniel, in the driver's seat is in fact the opponent this weekend.
That, by the way, don't tell Colin that. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear it.
Colin don't want to hear none of that.
None of it.
Colin, how's the NBA season? You know a lot about the Celtics. I don't. Teach me. I need to know more.
No, we don't.
Colin, we love you. A&M is mine, the opponent for LSU this week. And here is why. You talk about the schedule for LSU. Look at the schedule for A&M. A&M one loss, again, tradition like no other, beginning the season with a loss. They have LSU at home this weekend, which is a great matchup for them. Kyle Field's going to be rocking. That defensive line, I think LSU has, I don't know, some unworldly stat about not giving up. Nussmeier hasn't been sacked all year. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. LSU this weekend. I think A&M gets the dub at home against LSU this weekend. Okay, if that's the case, that means LSU has 2 losses, one SEC. Means A&M has 1 loss, LSU. Then they go to South Carolina. I'm not putting a W on A&M traveling to South Carolina after that day. I'm just here to tell you right now, that one is not, it's not a guarantee, because South Carolina is tricky, and they have shown they can play with the best of them at times. New Mexico State, Auburn, and then finish the year with Texas. So I think they get the dub, but they do wind up with 2 losses, one against Texas at the end of the year. I think Texas figures it out by them. Rivalry game to end the year with a chance to go to the SEC championship. I think Sark gets it together, because their defensive line for A&M is good, but it's not Georgia good. And their offense is figuring things out. Wigman's doing a great job on that offensive line. Running back's doing great. I actually like A&M's running game a great deal personally. I think they want to pass the ball, but man, they are stout in the trenches a great deal. And I think that's what's going to give Texas fits. I think it's going to be a close game, but I do anticipate Texas pulling that out. So I have possibly 2 more losses on the schedule for A&M, but it's not a guarantee for me. I think A&M's the second team. LSU's 1, A&M is 2 for me. We're going to come back.
The nice thing here, and just before we go to segment 2, let me get deep in the weeds here for a second. The nice thing here with A&M is that when you start going to tiebreaker scenarios, so let's say A&M beats LSU this weekend and then runs the table the rest of the way and loses to Texas, right? So they have 1 conference loss, and Georgia also wins the rest of their games, finishes with 1 conference loss. The tiebreaker is head-to-head. Obviously, Georgia and A&M do not play this year. The second tiebreaker for SEC championship game is record against common opponents, common SEC opponents. A&M did not play Alabama this year, but we would both have played Texas. If A&M takes a loss to Texas at the end of the year, Georgia obviously having beaten Texas, if Georgia wins out, they would own the tiebreaker over A&M, which is why I just think some of these, I don't know, we can talk about it maybe, but Georgia, I think, has a leg up on a team like A&M, because A&M's most likely loss, even though it's at home, is the game against Texas at the end of the year. But yeah, I think both of those teams are clearly in the driver's seat. We're going to come back and talk about teams that have a shot, maybe a bit more of an outside shot of making that SEC championship game and making things interesting. But first, want to let you know about these.
These are, in fact, LinkedIn, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Everybody's hiring these days, and everybody needs to hire these days. And you need to hire like a professional, and you probably don't have time to put on many different hats, many different places. There are millions and millions of businesses who are out there hiring with adaptive AI that goes ahead and finds the right candidate for your right team right now. Many of these qualified candidates are there within 24 hours of you posting your job, which you can do for free. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free right now. If you want a qualified candidate and you want them in a hurry and you need to find them, go over there right now. And as a matter of fact, if you need to find a new team to go ahead and join, LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Go over there. You can find the team that you need. Many of these are less than 24 hours, millions of users, millions of connections, networks all over the place. Post your job for free. Stop being an amateur, be a professional. Stop being a Texas fan, be a Georgia fan. Grow up and become part of the big boy club. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. All right, we gave LSU and A&M as 1 and 2, the most likely to get the SEC championship, not named Georgia. Daniel, where would you put you said Georgia has a leg up. Would you put Georgia at 2 behind LSU for likeliest chance to reach the SEC championship before we get to some teams that have an outside shot of making it in?
I think it depends on what you think is going to happen for Georgia the rest of the way, right? Like if you feel really good that this defense is fixed, that which I do, that Carson Beck is going to be able to be good enough, like coming down the stretch,
okay, and
Georgia's going to win the rest of their games. If you think that, and Georgia's going to win out, I think you put Georgia at 1. I think Georgia has the best shot of making it. But if Georgia loses, they're obviously in a really tough position. You got teams like A&M and LSU who are sitting at 0 conference losses. One of them's going to take an L, but one of them's going to get through one of the tougher games left on their schedule and still be undefeated in conference play. Whoever the winner this weekend is in College Station is probably number 1. And then I put Georgia number 2 ahead of the loser of that game, and then my next team, which is Texas, to make it back to Atlanta and only finish the season, obviously, with a 1 conference loss to Georgia. That would be the team that I would have next in line. You look at Texas's schedule, it really is very, very manageable the SEC just. They did the same thing that the Big 12 has done, which is bend the knee to Texas exclusively. We saw what the SEC officiating crew did on Saturday, which was bend the knee to Texas. We saw the repercussions that Texas faced from the league office, a $250,000 fine. Give me a break.
Joke.
Actually give me a break. If you want to find the Texas Athletic Department, you better make it $250 million. That is a number that could put a marginal dent in the Texas Athletic Department. $250,000 is an absolute, it is laughable. And now they're going to ban, they're going to use all available technology to ban. We're going to Big Brother these fans and then find their faces on camera. Got to be kidding me. Okay, so the SEC
over here is just he's gonna be paying that fine he's gonna be begging fans because he's a joke of a commentator, a joke of an athlete, and a joke all around. He's gonna be begging.
Sorry, we're talking about Matthew McConaughey. Is that? Are we talking about Matthew McConaughey?
There's many of them. Daniel, we don't have time to go down the list of awful Texas Association fandom. We don't have time for that.
Sure.
What I do have time for is to say they're gonna do it every single time they don't like something, and they're gonna pay $250, and it's gonna be the end of it.
Yeah, the league office has done nothing but bend the knee to Texas, and you see it with the schedule here. So you got the road trip to Vandy this weekend, which I mean, God, wouldn't it be hilarious? But I don't think we can count on Diego Pavia to pull this up.
Come back for locks because I got a lock in that game.
Yeah, I mean, winning the game, no, but You think you're going to come down to Nashville? All right. And then you got Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky before finishing the game on the road at A&M. Obviously, that's going to be a tough game. I predicted at the beginning of the season that Texas was going to lose to A&M because I just think Kyle Field is going to be – there's no team that wants to beat any other team in any season in the history of college football, I think, more than A&M wants to beat Texas this year because of everything that transpired between those franchises and the lack of the game being played. All that being said, I think you have to favor Texas to win at least most, if not all, of these games coming down the stretch. I do think Texas is good. I think they probably are the second best team. That's not what we're talking about, but they are the second best team in the SEC. And so I got to put them at well, I guess fourth on my list. So it'd be the winner of the A&M LSU game, Georgia at 2, the loser of the A&M LSU game at 3, and I got Texas at 4. Where are you going with your maybe our 5th place team and the team that might have something to say about this SEC championship race when all's said and done?
Well, I think you're right. Texas is there, but they are not in the driver's seat because they have to win out, and then Georgia has to lose a game against Ole Miss, Tennessee down the road as well, which I don't anticipate seeing. Florida, by the way, really quick on the Texas schedule, and as well on the LSU schedule. LSU has to go to Florida. Florida is starting to figure some things out, and I know that sounds.
DJ Lagway was always better than Graham Mertz, and Sunbelt Billy's going to play his way into a new contract, and that is chef's kiss.
We're here for it. Let the record state.
Let's beat them bad this weekend, Dogs, but not too bad.
Not too bad.
You hear what I'm saying?
I mean,
you hear
Kirby?
Me?
How about give me 2 death marches? Give me 2 death marches. And
an 18-point victory would be fine this weekend.
We're fine with that. Don't get above 25, Kirby. Just okay. But I think you're right. Texas is next on that list. They play Florida, but Florida goes over to Austin in that A&M game. I agree. Daniel, by the way, before we continue, best chances to reach SEC championship via ESPN, which, what are you doing?
Here you go. ESPN. Oh, you already said it. No, you already said it.
I said it.
You don't have to clarify it. You already said via ESPN.
I don't have to clarify that.
So
what
everybody
I'm about to
knows.
say is a joke. It's a joke.
It's almost as if you said via Pro Football Focus.
Like same thing.
Same. It's the same thing. I
mean, Laura Ratledge and her child has more insight on picking games than ESPN, anybody like that. Anyway, best chance: Texas at 49, LSU at 37, Georgia at 32, Texas A&M 31. And this is the last team that I do think has an outside shot to get it. Tennessee at 35% to make the SEC championship. And here's the reason why. And it has nothing to do with the schedule going ahead. It has everything to do with the style of play that is happening in Tennessee right now. Much to the chagrin of Josh Heupel, he does not like this. He hates every single moment of what's being played right now in Tennessee. He's winning football games, but I guarantee you he's pissed about it. He's mad about winning. Kirby Smart just cares about W's. Josh cares about how you get W's. And right now, they're winning with good defense, good tackling, good run game, and their freshman quarterback doing just enough to play for a win. Now, that sounds like a recipe that, again, any college football fan would like because your team is winning the biggest games, although I don't know how many more goalposts you have or rivers to put them in. So just why don't you chill for a hot minute? I don't know how many more times that's going to leach into the water. And then
is that Vandy game at home at the end of the year? Are they going to have to tear down the goalpost when they beat Vandy at the end of the year? Because Tennessee fans, like, that's what they do now. Anytime they beat.
I think Tennessee, but it's going to be hard for Tennessee. I think, again, Dogs come up. I predicted beginning of the year that Georgia would lose to Tennessee. I think having the linebacker out for Tennessee and Nico's regression, he has regressed as the season's gone on. And if you want to play stout run defense and stout rushing offense against Georgia at home, bring it. Like, let's play. I think we'll be fine with that. So I think Tennessee takes the L. I have switched my prediction based upon how the season has gone and how Georgia has stepped up. But they would be the next team. Daniel, did I get that wrong, or is there another SEC squad that should be there?
I think that's the next team on the list, and I think you're absolutely right about the about who Tennessee is. Nico's a game manager at this point. Like, that's who he is.
Yeah.
And boy, Tennessee fans, you don't want to hear that. Like, that's not who you wanted, and that's not necessarily who the kid will always be. But he is an absolute game manager at this point. Tennessee does have a very favorable schedule moving forward, but this is the team that almost went to Gainesville, or that almost had the Gators come to their place at night and almost lost. Needed to go to overtime to beat Florida, and so this is a Tennessee team that proved they can lose to anybody. Hell, they almost lost to a really bad Alabama team last week. Like,
gosh,
I know they beat us, guys. They're really bad. Notice we did not talk about them. They ain't making they're not done losing yet. Clint.
No, they're not.
They're not done losing yet.
I think I was mocked somewhere for saying they had 2 more losses on the schedule by somebody, and then sure enough, it's only 1 more to that being true. And I actually think they have 2 more losses on the schedule.
They might have 2 more losses
this week, starting this week. So
they might have 3 more losses on the schedule. Don't look now, but if Hugh Freeze gets his only SEC win of the year against Alabama, I'm telling you.
We're going to come back after this and let you know what the chances, if Georgia doesn't make the SEC, if LSU, A&M, Texas, Tennessee make the SEC championship, what are the percentage chances that Georgia makes the playoff? But first, these. FanDuel, FanDuel.com is the place that Daniel and I go to make our wagers every single time. Last week, we had a winning record. This week, we anticipate the same thing. Come back when I'm going to go ahead and give you a lock in the Vanderbilt, Texas game, because that point spread is 2 daggum many points. Daniel, 18.5 last time we checked. There is the lock. I'm giving you free preview. Take Vandy and the points. Lock it up. FanDuel.com is where you can go to make all of these dreams come true of yours. Best sports wagering on the planet. It's the place where Daniel and I go to make all the sports books bets that we have. The official sports book of Locked On Bulldogs. Right now, you make a $5 wager. You get $200 in bonus bets. That's $5 wager. You get $200 in bonus bets straight to your account. FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. All right, Daniel, let's talk about the likelihood.
Yeah, go ahead.
The likelihood of making the playoff, regardless of SEC championship, regardless if we make it, regardless if we win it or lose it. And a lot of y'all, by the way, out here talking about your preferred path to the playoff. I want to make the playoff. So
just put me in there,
preferred path. I don't care. I don't want to play that. You do that as a fan, but I guarantee you Kirby and the team is not doing that. So it's just a futile point. Okay. But
let me ask you this though. Let me ask you this before we get to percentage that Georgia makes the playoff, because I think that is the ultimate question. That is regardless of what Alabama fans will tell you, since they haven't won the actual championship in
their
quite
own
some time, and they ain't going to be winning it this year, or let me just look ahead to next year. Nope, they're not going to be winning it next year or anytime soon. So the SEC championship is not the ultimate goal for this Georgia team. We respect it. We want it. Now, let me get out ahead of this, though. You want to win the SEC championship game. You want to play in the SEC championship game so that you can win the SEC championship game so that you can get that bye. I know hosting a playoff game sounds fun.
It would be a blast.
And it would be a blast. Two things can be true at the same time. But you do not want to do it. Another game is another opportunity for 2 things to happen.
Thing 1.
You lose the football game. People beat people every single week. And you cheer for a football team, Georgia fans, that has unequivocally proven, that they are capable of losing to any team on God's green earth. We almost, and by all accounts, should have lost to Kentucky earlier this year. So this team is capable of losing to anyone. Don't tell me that any team coming into Athens in that playoff couldn't sneak up and beat us. So that's thing number one that can happen. Thing number two that can happen is you could win the football game and one of your best players gets injured.
There it is.
Moving into the second round of the playoff when you got to play a real, legitimate powerhouse national championship ready program. Okay. You're going to have to beat 3 teams that think they can win the national championship. Now, in that first round game, if you get to play the 7 or the 9, the 10, the 11, the 12 seed, that team may not think they have a chance to win the national championship. But to win it all, you're going to have to win in the second round, in the third round, and in the championship game against teams that legitimately believe they can win the national championship. You want to do that. You want to go into that 3-game gauntlet as healthy and as rested as you possibly can. Don't tell me about the extra week off, not having to prepare for the championship game. That doesn't matter because you got to go back out and play that game in the first round of the playoff. Okay. That's enough of a soapbox. You want to win the SEC championship game.
We are pro making and winning the SEC championship. Yeah. The official statement. I know that's controversial.
Regardless of that, I think Georgia can lose any game on their schedule against an FBS team.
Yeah, he was very clear.
So I think Georgia can lose to Georgia Tech. I think Georgia can lose to Tennessee, obviously, to Ole Miss. I think Georgia can lose to Florida. I'm not saying I think they can lose those games. I think they can lose a game, any of those games, and still make the playoff. 2-loss Georgia is a lock with a win over Texas. 2-loss Georgia is a lock to make the college football playoff. And so I think as long as you don't lose 2 games, you're a lock. If we are a lock to make the college football playoff. That being said, I think there's a lot of Georgia fans that have convinced themselves from the preseason that 3-loss Georgia is going to make the playoff. And I'm just here to tell you, they are not. 3-loss Georgia is not going to make the college football playoff, which means if you only lose 1 or none the rest of the way, you're in. But if Georgia finds a way to lose 2 more games, I don't think they're making the college football playoff. Now, the good news for Georgia is if we lose another game in the regular season, I don't think there's any chance we're making the SEC championship game.
No, because I think LSU, Texas, Tennessee, all those teams are going to do it. Now, that was my question to you.
I know I just said you want to make that game.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting on 2 losses, you do not want to make that game because that's another opportunity to take a loss. And if you lose that game, you're out of the – I think you might be out of the playoff. I think there's going to be a bunch of 1-loss power conference teams this year, and I just don't think a 3-loss Tennessee – I don't think a 3-loss Alabama, certainly. I don't think a 3-loss Georgia is going to make the college football playoff this year. I just don't. And so 1 loss, yeah, we're fine. Multiple losses the rest of the way, I don't think we're making it. Period.
He is Daniel. I'm Clint. Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. We'll be back tomorrow talking more Dogs. We'll see you guys then.